Welcome to NeedleXChange, conversations on the art of thread. Niki McDonald, also known as TapestryGirl, is an Australian needlework artist whose urban pop art portraits use modern street art styles to tell stories of iconic characters that she's created. We talk about how Niki juggles the artistic path while also working in special needs education and being a modern mother. And we talk about how she came to develop such a recognisable style. I loved talking with Niki, whose calmness and considered philosophy to life is a curious contrast to the vibrant attitude of her work. If you're a fan of needlework and textile art and you know like-minded people, please tell them about the podcast. I'm on a mission to change the way the world thinks about needlecraft, and NeedleXChange is an important part of that journey, so enjoy the show. Are you still a teacher?
Yeah, I'm I'm a head teacher of a special ed within a high school. So I used to be, I trained as an art teacher. And then I just couldn't do my art and be an art teacher because there was too much kind of conflict of creativity, and I was really invested in what everyone was doing and used it all up. So then I became a textile and food tech teacher, and now I'm a special ed teacher because you can just channel all knowledge into that. They're doing life skills, and so we do textiles, food tech, art, gardening, and then all the maths and English. But it's a good job.
Yeah, what kind of age range are the kids?
High school.
Right.
It's like a support unit within a big school of 1,500 students. The class I'm actually teaching, the students are about 13, 14, living with autism. So I really instill lots of calm, consistency, that sort of thing. And that's where textiles, food and gardening comes in, really, because it's really, really good for mental health, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I used to work for a children's charity back when I had like a real job. And I was an IT project manager, but the charity had lots of different services around the country. And some of them were working with people with additional needs, but they were also services that worked with young offenders, people who had offended and come back out to try and like integrate them into society. And one of the things that always struck me was these services provided loads of different life skills. So like you say, like cooking and gardening. And while they wouldn't work for all of the kids, for some of them, it would like really light a fire under them. And it was really kind of inspiring to see that, just to see people kind of awaken to something.
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's all transferable skills. And so is art, textiles, food, gardening. It's all creativity. And so if you can instill that sort of like methodical working, goal setting, the transferable skills are enormous. So I think I like to approach things in that holistic manner. So people, they can build confidence and build boundaries, and also, like Steiner said, at the end of the day, have something to point to that makes a happy person.
They're all quite analog things as well, aren't they? I think that they're good for reminding us that we're natural beings rather than sort of the products of marketing or something.
Yeah, well, because I work in a high school, you should see the amount of devices, technology. If someone isn't on their computer, they're on their phone. And now the New South Wales schools are taking away, saying, right, we're not going to allow phones at school. So people are working out, how can I use my watch? How can I do all this? Because kids are really connected to their devices, for better or worse. But yeah, I like to go with the analog, and again, that's that textiles thing. It's primal, it's tactile, it's got tradition, and so I think if we come back to that sort of primary purpose, it can only soothe our souls, really.
Yeah, I did a needle exchange with Kaz Holmes a little while ago, and she said that she uses her fingers as a communication tool when she's like talking to the textiles, which I thought was a really interesting way of putting it.
I listened to that. It was really good. In fact, I listened to it yesterday and I really enjoyed it. And I really loved that contextualization of, she was saying that she's got in one of her eyes that she has limited vision, but then she was saying how she makes up for that, or you were saying, in this really broad spectrum amount of creativity. And, you know, what came through for me, and with so many textile artists, is this massive amount of creativity that they channel in so many different ways. And I think that's what's good really about this podcast and other podcasts that showcase artists. You get a real surprise what lights each person up and what cultivates each person's creativity.
Yeah, it's a rewarding adventure for me, because every conversation I had almost adds another layer on top of a previous one, you know. So I don't know much about anything, but bit by bit you feel like you can start to form a picture, or you can start to understand common themes. And there's definitely something about just working in textiles and the slowness of it, and like the purity of the whole experience, the way it makes, you know, that was what I fell in love with in the first place, the way it makes your soul sing.
Well, I have always loved textiles. My grandma knitted, and then when I was about 5, my parents bought me a loom, like a little table loom, and I was weaving and, you know, doing all that sort of thing. And I did textiles for my leaving, like we call it RHSC, and I did it like a tapestry, and I did like a fabric collage book that got into like an exhibition, a travelling one. And I went to uni, and it was a Bachelor of Creative Arts, and it really attracted me to the fact that the creative part, and it was based on the Bauhaus, so you weren't allowed to, say, go in and just do painting or just do a fine art. So I, of course, went into textiles because I just love it. Like, I love that sort of cleanliness of it, like, you go and do sculpture and it's dirty and there's stuff flying everywhere. You do printmaking and it's like terps, and you do painting and it's oil. So for me it was sort of clean and quite primal, manageable, really natural. So I did that, but I didn't really learn a lot of direct skills because it was the Bauhaus thing. You had to do music and drama, and then the textiles, and so throughout all that, I got to do felting, weaving, all the things. But the main thing was just kind of cultivating creativity, which was really nice. And I feel like I have gained a lot from that, and the people I went to uni with also gained a lot from that sort of holistic, let's find out where the creativity is and where you can channel it. And but you know, they didn't really like rate Needlepoint tapestry because, you know, it is a little bit chocolate boxy, and at the time I just drew up my own ones, but no one was really doing that. They were sort of, you know, and as it is, the hierarchy is that loom weaving and proper, like, you know, proper traditional tapestry. But I've just kind of got that paradox of, I did study textiles, but I'm so hook, line and sinker into the needlepoint tapestry. I think it's because I did the screen printing and I loved it, and I loved how it layered and you'd bring it all together with the key black lines, but I just couldn't stand the terps and the paint, so I just turned my tapestries into what could be a screen print.
Because you did a major in textiles and a minor in printmaking, which quite frankly sounds like about the nicest possible degree course I've ever heard of. That must have been such a great time.
It was such a great time, yeah. And then writing, we had to write essays on Debussy, and like I even did one on Bob Dylan because we had to show how music kind of combined with the creativity. So yeah, it was a really good degree. I loved it, and I look back and I think there's people who come out with these really great high-end skills, and I just came out with a real curiosity and a desire to explore and a desire to look around and channel my ideas and my concepts just into my needlepoint tapestry, really.
But the thing that's interesting, because I looked on your website and you've got stuff there from sort of 2009, which I guess is probably around the time when this started to happen. But you've come out of the gate swinging. Like, the stuff you're doing now is very much in concord with the stuff you were doing then. Like, you clearly had, like, this is my thing and I'm going to go and do it.
Yeah. I think I'm noticeable, that the work has a flavour and people go, oh, I know her work, or they'll see it and go, oh, that must be Niki /TapestryGirl, But so when I came out of uni, I actually went to London for 18 months and did nannying and worked over there because I was born in Belfast and had a British passport, but came out when I was 6 months old, so I feel very Australian, but have massive roots to, UK. But when I came back, I didn't go, I was, in my 20s and I didn't work. I wasn't a teacher then. I worked in television and wasn't doing a lot of art, but then I had kids and I would have to take, as you do, it's an absolute pleasure not have to take, like to play group and to swimming and to soccer. And I found that I was in this really sort of stationary place and I'd pick up my phone and start sort of texting. I went, this is garbage. So I just grabbed, some tapestry canvas, painted it all up, and wherever I was going, I was sewing. And I found that it soothed my soul. I wasn't going, oh, I've got to sit here for an hour. There I was, like, making all this stuff. So by the time that I think it took about 2 years and I had my first big exhibition with lots of 10-point tapestry, canvas. So little stitches, big work. Really what I could point to is probably sitting with my kids watching a bit of Bob the Builder, sitting at the soccer classes, sitting at playgroup, sitting at martial arts, and there you go. And I went, well, there's time management, habit stacking. I'll just pack it all in my backpack. I used to call it my Dora Explorer, little textile bag, Off I'd go and they'd sit there, doing their thing. And then I felt like I was living my life on purpose. So sort of no regrets of missing out on doing art or doing anything by, alongside of bringing up my boys.
Did that rub off on any of the people you were sat around? Or, because I guess back then as well, they weren't quite as phonesy as they are now, right? So people would have still been just like...
Yeah, but they still were. I mean, we'd chat and whatever, but no, I think I was the only one. Maybe a couple of, maybe somebody knitted, but no, I was definitely... the person sitting there sewing and people go, oh, how much have you done? Because swimming classes might be a weekly sort of event. How much have you done? Oh, look, because as we know, they grow slowly. But literally there was so much time when, you had to be around. And then I just extended that. Like I hashtag my work. I mean, it's a hashtag, so as I go, and, my boys are older now and do their own thing. So, but wherever I go, I'm taking my work. I've got some huge pieces that are bigger than me and I can roll them up and put them out and do that. And they even have those sort of show off moments where, wow, I'm on a boat, so I'm going to take a photo with my tapestry. But I also have some that fit in an A3 pencil case and I'll have them. And so really the piece that I take might be informed by where I'm going. And I just feel like I don't want any wasted moments. Like if I'm there, I can be very present and sewing, because I think the main part of my work, the needlepoint tapestries, I have an idea. I'm like, I'll be walking down an alleyway, I'll get an idea, I'm listening to a podcast, an audio book, I can even be walking along and hear somebody say a word and bang, I'm on, great, I've got an idea. I'll go down, I take my car out of the garage, I paint it all up. I'll either spray paint and hand paint, and I can use my data projector. So all that happens in kind of about 12 hours. But then depending on the size of it, it could be months of sewing. But that's the really beautiful, methodical part where I just get into a meditative place and I'm sewing. And, with needlepoint, it's so... For me, I know there's lots of stitches out there, and I do cross stitch too, but it's so kind of repetitious. I get into a really lovely rhythm, and it's sort of the daily grind just floats away, and I'm sewing and I'm building and I'm seeing, often I'm doing the half cross stitch and I'm seeing the colours radiate against each other, the different kind of wools, and I don't know, it just sort of excites me. I love it. And I love the paradox that, I've got it. I think I'm a Gemini, so I live in paradox land. Mm-hmm. I do urban lights, bright, sort of urban sort of faces and spaces and places, but I always sew in natural environments. So, that's always in a forest, on a beach, on a rock, on a boat, so these paradoxes sort of come in. But also I think a massive paradox is the needlepoint tapestry from when I was sort of growing up and beyond, hundreds of years, the passivity, the passive place that women were depicted, and to sit back and sew, so they were quiet, a women's, a quiet activity where, you were sort of seen and not heard. And the images were an affirmation of kind of goodness and these best practice, the Swiss Alps with a deer looking alert, or very chocolate boxy, and, very beautiful in their own right. And I have, I've been working with some of the older tapestries and, paying homage to that tradition. But I feel again, another paradox is I've made these sort of tapestries that have what I believe they're sort of sassy, urban, strong, empowered women. And I have this sort of fantasy that the women of the past who are sitting there doing their needlepoint are almost kind of plotting for this, autonomy for people of the future to have massive amounts of creativity. And here we'll just sit here looking like we're just sewing away and being really quiet, but actually we're just sending good vibes forward so people can have lights and brights and colours and, that incremental sort of thing where, how feminism sort of grew. And just that self-expression. I think we are in a place where you have very sustained self-expression where people can say, I want, I want to wear this. I want to express myself that way. And I remember 20 years ago or so going to the Art Gallery of New South Wales and seeing Tracy Emin's tent, all the people I'd slept with, and I was blown away because there it was, a textiles piece, so much vulnerability on display. I loved all the little stitches and the sewing and the scale of it. And I just thought, wow, she's really edgy. She's taken, the medium of textiles and made it just an expression, a channel for her expression. And I think for me, she did a lot to inspire me in wanting to use textiles in a sort of a contemporary way.
Yeah, I love it. There's a few things I want to address. One is, one of the most annoying things that I love about you is all your pictures of you happily stitching in the most amazing backdrops. because you clearly live in a beautiful part of the world, and you're like, I'm stitching here, and it's so amazing, and I'm so jealous. So I'm just wanting to get that off my chest. But I also have this thesis about stitching, and particularly, and needlepoint's the perfect one, the meditative quality of it, because when you meditate, if your mind wanders, you're supposed to come back to center. But particularly with needlepoint, because you don't have to think very hard, but you have to look every couple of milliseconds to where you're putting the needle, you're always centered. And so it's like such a strong present moment thing. I feel quite jealous that I've not thought to take it when I'm sat in swimming lessons wondering when the time is going to end. So I might start doing that now.
Yeah. I mean, all it takes is a little bag, a roll up, and, and you're sitting there. And I remember a couple of times thinking, I wonder if I look odd. And I thought, you know what? At the end of the day, I've got, like Steiner said, something to point to for my time. And I think that's really important for us, especially in our modern time. And I had an exhibition up in the Blue Mountains, and I did a workshop, and a lot of kids came, and I handed out little squares of needlepoint. And the parents said, they came back the next day, they said, when we got back to our houses, or they were staying on holidays, our kids didn't even want the iPad. They go, I want to finish it. And I think that, again, that primal part, and that it's achievable. I think when you've got, I think I just did some nice kind of lights and brights, a bit of spray paint. So all they were doing was sort of following some colours, and it was a bit of an abstract piece, but it was very achievable once they learnt that half cross stitch. So I'm really, I'm very committed to how engaging, like needlepoint, cross stitch, any form of sort of portable textiles can be. I think for me, knitting's really tricky. Like I've done a bit, or crochets, but I think I can nearly always teach someone needlepoint, cross stitch sort of thing, and they quite get a lot out of it. I did go through a stage of doing quite a lot of workshops and taking in either a 5 count or an 8 count. So, it could get done quite well in the wool. And, people really responded well to it, and always had something to point to at the end of the day and went, wow, I really like this. It's another form of art.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I went through in that respect was when I used to go on train journeys, and I would sit and do cross stitch on a train, because British people don't really like talking to strangers on trains anyway, let alone the big bald fella who appears to be doing a bit of cross stitch. And over time, I adapted to be at peace with it. But for a long time, I was very much like, oh my God, what are these people going to be thinking? And all those sort of things. But I always remember one time the ticket collector came through the carriages, and I was stitching. It was quite a full train, so he was just checking everybody's tickets and could see what we were doing. Obviously got to the end of the train and then walked his way back. And as he came back, he literally went, I do rag rugging. And just like, as he sped past the table, just made this like confession to me, because obviously I'd given him this safe space to do it or something. It was so funny.
That is so good.
You feel like because so many people have got a connection to it, like it does, if you can unlock it, then it does provide people an opportunity to have that conversation, even if it's just for their own curiosity, because you're not doing what everybody else is doing. It's quite if you can if they can get over themselves, I think it can be quite rewarding for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the people who are sitting there doing that are really brave. So, like, I really commend you for sitting on the train doing that. I've planes, trains, automobiles. Like, I really love a good road trip where I'm the passenger, and I'll start a brand new one, and then by the end of it, I'm like, look how much I've done, and it's really nice. Again, I mean, I know I'm going on about it, but it's something to show for your time. And I have exhibitions a lot. Like, I've got one opening this weekend, and I think I've got 12 things in it. So it's sort of, even though, I've got a day job and there's lots of things go on in just day-to-day life, but if you can carve out that time to get it done, then it's kind of rewarding. You do feel like living life on purpose, really, when you're following your passion and getting things done.
And it's akin to a spiritual practice,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because of the meditative quality of it, I guess, if you're forcing yourself, because I try and do that. I've been trying to say to myself, my life is very full, but I owe it to myself to at least spend like half an hour, if I can, instead of just sat in front of the telly staring at it, doing a bit of needlepoint, doing a bit of cross stitch at the same time, because I know that it's going to be good for my soul. And I guess because one of the questions I was going to ask you, some people, when they're making art, compartmentalize it, like they'll go to a studio space because of the nature of the work or whatever. Are you able to put those things into compartments, or do you not need to because of that manifold effect of you're making art, but you're also meditating, so you're making good use of your time? Do the boundaries blur? Are you able to keep order with things?
Yeah, well, my bedroom and under my bed has lots of work, and then I've got a garage that I just pull my car out of, and it turns into a really kind of pretty good studio. I would never say never, but I have never, and I can't ever imagine having to drive somewhere to do my work, because I like to be, parenting. I like to be getting organised for work. I'm quite good at habit stacking. I've got all the things going on, and then I just grab the artwork when I can. But sometimes I'm really, really driven, and it's like every night I get back, and it's like I feel like with for me and my creativity, it's a bit like a relationship. Sometimes it's really strong and it's going, and I'm really passionate about it, and it's all I want to do. When I'm in the zone, I'm like, wow, this is where I want to be. I'm connected to it, and then I think, well, this has just got to last forever, and then it'll kind of wear off. I don't know if this happens to you. And then I'll have like, I want to break up with it. I want to be a normal person. I want to go to the movies. I want to, I don't want to think about buying more of that, what color wool. Oh, it's done. Now I've got to get it kind of stretched and framed. And then I want to drive it to the gallery and, put myself sort of, in a vulnerable position because it's now up for sale. I want to be normal. I want to be like one of those people that goes to the, the beach and just sort of lies on the beach. And then I'll be walking down the street and I'll just hear a word and then I light up again. So it's sort of all this kind of, it's almost like a love-hate relationship with, art, creativity. And if someone said, gee, I wish I was an artist, you go, no, you don't. It just grabs you and you just have to do it. And, it's pretty, it's lovely, but there's sort of, it's not an easy journey being an artist, especially if you want to, exhibit and, from that, the creation point to either selling it or just giving it away or, to the end point. It's a big journey, I think.
How do you manage your time? And like those things with, you've got an exhibition coming up, you've got so many pieces of work you want to do, you're very aware of how long those pieces take. What's your kind of project management approach?
I guess the last thing you ever want to do is a rush. So I guess I don't ever initiate an exhibition till most of the tapestries are done. So the last thing I could do is ever rush stitching because they just don't stitch themselves. It's a certain amount of time and a certain amount of sort of gratitude and goes into making it. So I would never put forward the idea, like I'll have a big goal, and I do have lots of big goals that perhaps will have to be realised over time, but I wouldn't say to, I'm represented by a gallery in Sydney, so I wouldn't say to them, I'll have an exhibition in 3 months if I absolutely knew I couldn't. I'm going to be realistic, and I didn't give them a lot of work. And then they rang me just recently and said, have you got much? And I said, oh, actually, I do have a bit. And so I took it in. They went, yeah, there's enough for an exhibition. So I'm part of a big kind of group one. But I can't put that sort of pressure on myself, or I will just cave. But what I sometimes do is complement the tapestries with big paintings. So, or the paintings might inform a little tapestry or a big one. So sometimes if I know I've got 3 months to go and I've got like 8 tapestries or something, but I want to fill the walls, I'll do some nice big paintings that complement, and that can be a nice filler.
So here's a perfect question for half an hour into the conversation then. How would you describe your style and the medium that you use?
Yeah, well, I think that I've got like a contemporary urban pop, maybe. Not pop art, but urban pop, in the way that I use sort of bright colours and patterning and bring it all together with key black lines. So I don't think I've got any work without that sort of style, the key black lines, bringing it together, which is sort of, I guess, street art style.
Yeah.
Banksy uses his key black lines. There's lots of kind of
loads
famous
of graffiti artists that you do that, don't you? You put the colour and then the black lines are the things that define the shape and bring it all together. Yeah. That's like straight off the street.
Yeah, and even straight off the street. And what I love is that so you can have all that chaos and then the key black lines bring it together. And that's another thing I really like about needlepoint tapestry is when you have that spray paint or the digital dot matrix, it looks like the repetition of the stitches. So again, it's like that print medium, it's the street art medium. Even Walt Disney, if you look at the way that he drew his Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, he sort of drew the colours and then brought it in together with key black lines. So I'm kind of stuck on that. I don't think I'm going to shift from that, except for when I sort of do some repurposed old tapestries and kind of make them contemporary. I go with the flavour of them. But I think my noticeable work is that sort of key black lines. I really love that. Like it does something to me when I'm walking along. Like I went to Melbourne for a holiday and it's really like known for its alleyways and its street art and, has beautiful pieces and then like all the paste ups over the top of it and then more. And it's like this really electric collaboration of somebody puts something on a wall, someone else comes and sticks something, then someone else does this. And in the end, you've got this, like there's so much vitality in that. And in a way, I want to capture that vitality in this sort of permanent medium because, you're walking down the alleyways in where it may be London, Melbourne, Sydney, I don't know, anywhere really. And then you walk down a week later and it's different. So either it gets, whitewashed over or I did hear that Banksy came to Melbourne, put something over and someone who wasn't in the know whitewashed it over or something. Or, this happens all the time. Like it's so ephemeral. But when, I would photograph it at these alleyways and use bits and pieces of it. And I think it sort of gives it this permanency because, needlepoint tapestries last for, hundreds of years, like wool strong. And so it's captured that really vital moment where all these people have, put adrenaline into it, like they've done their bit and often in the dark because it's maybe not legal. But again, it's got that energy of that. And I don't know if I always capture that sort of so perfectly, but, that's sort of a little bit of a drive to try and get that flavour or get that energy.
Yeah, I sometimes think people don't realise because it's like a temporal collaborative art project, isn't it? Sometimes two graffiti artists will spend time drawing over each other's work, but a lot of the time it just happens over time, and it's almost like this weird documentary that's going on these streets. And I think the other thing that's interesting, there's another artist called Jacqueline Royal who has a similar approach, in that she's very interested in, you know, the effort that people make, because a lot of the time we just kind of glaze over this stuff, unless you go somewhere where it's deliberately like, these are graffiti streets, you know, Bristol, those kind of places. But a lot of the time, if you see them on underpasses or train bridges or whatever, but that's somebody's art. Like, they've taken the time to make that, and so it's almost like it deserves some praise, regardless of what our instinctual feelings are about it. And so then that idea that you've got of like converting it into a different format, it gives it the praise it deserves. It makes us consider it in a different direction.
Yeah, I think there's real energy in that, and I think it's really empowering. And I guess I've empowered, the female form, and done graffiti over and paint, and I love neon lights and, you know, the colours of that, and the headlights or the tail lights reflecting on people as they're walking down the street, perhaps like across their eyes. Or it's just a really lovely amalgamation of all things urban channeled into these, to my tapestries. And I feel like I still have so much more to explore there, even though at first I started just doing the landscape, and then I started putting the landscape into the female form, and kind of really enjoyed how that worked. And I guess I continue doing that. It's sort of like, I guess, sassy, urban. I
think as well, sometimes you have the same characters that you've used over time. The girl with the bobbed hair is a particular favourite of mine. But I think what's interesting is the treatment of those characters. I guess it's become more refined over time, or your technique has evolved over time. I wonder if you can sort of speak to that a bit.
Yeah, and it is. I call her Bob Girl, the urban explorer. And often if I do, I'll write a little story about what she's done. Like, she's, walking down the street and there's a convertible Mustang with like a Chili Peppers song, coming out, Learn to Fly. And, I create this whole big story around her. And it gives her the reason to be down that street or what she's doing. And so again, like, I continually use that sort of template because I put her in different situations, and it depends, I guess, on what count of tapestry. So some of them I've done her in have been 3.75, like a rugging canvas, and then she's kind of chunky and, taking in the colours of the street in a much more sort of chunky way. But then some of them are 10. I never really do anything lower than a 10 count. And so then she's more refined with, she might have graffiti on her arm, or, a tattoo, or, recently I've been just putting butterflies in my work because I was in one of my kind of breakup with art modes, and was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm dead. Like, I've got no ideas. And then I went to an art fair and I was walking along, and this girl was speaking to one of the booths, and she goes, oh, well, I'm just re-emerging from COVID. And I went, oh, re-emerging. And that word, it just came to me, and I just saw butterflies and cocoons. So for the last year I've been putting butterflies in my work, because I feel like there was just that time during COVID. I made so much, and was having, in those 3 years, or I had 3 big exhibitions all kind of mapped out, and every one of them went online. And the last one, which I thought was going to be okay because Sydney was fine, and then there was a flare-up and it all locked down again. And I was like, oh, I can't do this, because the online, it's fine. And in fact, I don't even love going to a big exhibition opening or anything, but it was just quite tedious being in lockdown, and I did not love, like, I couldn't access a lot of creativity, and I was sort of making, so I'd drawn them all up, and then the exhibitions kept doing that. And then I heard this word re-emerge, and it just lit me up. And so most of my work in the last year has had a butterfly somewhere in it, just to I don't know, symbolise that re-emerging. And since I heard that word, I've been making and excited, and, the butterfly is going to, like, fly off soon, and then be the next thing. But I guess Bob Girl, I like to keep putting her in new places, and I like that she has been a constant, because it shows the journey, the different backgrounds, the butterfly here, or I did geckos for a while, and she had geckos sort of there because I'd read how sociable they were, and how if there were too many females, one would turn into a male, or vice versa. And I thought, how lovely for, the diversity, and I just thought it was just a great little symbol, have someone who was so friendly, chirped away on the ceiling, and could be so LGBTQI plus A,
They're both very transformative animals. I think the thing with butterflies is it's such, caterpillar, soup, butterfly. It's such a transformative thing. And, it still twists my melon a little bit that we've got probably about 85% the same DNA as those guys. So you think, wow, we should be able to just, I don't know, I should be able to change my eating habits if they can change their entire form or something. I think it serves as a very hopeful icon, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I'll do that. I latch on to things. I might latch on to even, like, there was a lot of graffiti around that had a crown. So I was putting this sort of graffiti crown on people and things, and it becomes like a little sort of anchor throughout my work for a year or a year and a half or something, and then next I'm on to the next thing. But there is definitely a strong flavour in my work where people will go, oh, that's identifiable as, like, whether it be, Tapestry Girl, which again is sort of like Bob Girl. I like that sort of character nature of it. Tapestry Girl can probably be a bit more playful and curious than perhaps Niki McDonald might be. I can sort of extend myself. I can go on Instagram as Tapestry Girl and maybe be a little bit more vocal, or a little bit more showy, or, oh, I'm going to put this on as I go and put all the nice places, because that's the Tapestry Girl kind of character, and Bob Girl's kind of friends with Tapestry Girl. So it's a little bit kind of playful, and, I can have fun with that rather than sort of get serious and go, oh, have I posted too much? Oh, have I done this? As because social media is something to navigate and to balance out, but having more of a character sort of thing, I can take more risks.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, obviously, I'm Mr. X Stitch, and he's hilarious, whereas Jamie Chalmers is very quite dull. But I was having the same conversation with Danielle Clough, fiance Knowles, and the same thing there. Yes. She got her nickname from back when she used to be a VJ, but she still uses it now as a tool because, like you say, it gives us a bit of extra oomph. I think and to me as well, I think it's quite a useful tool because if things go well, if you become a bit viral or if you become a bit famous, being able to switch that personality off is quite good for your soul. I often say about, I'd go and do a workshop at a festival somewhere and everyone would be like, oh, you're marvelous. And I'd sit back down in the car and I'd phone my wife and then she'd be like, right, this is the stuff we need from the supermarket. And you come back down to earth. And I think if you're your own brand, it's quite hard to negotiate that. Whereas if you can turn Tapestry Girl off and I can turn Mr. X Stitch off, it's a useful tool, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like it. I think, I really love Fiance Knowles, and I've been to one of her workshops when she came to Sydney, and we talk a lot on Instagram. I think she's fantastic, as are so many people on Instagram. They are so inspirational, and I get so excited to like meet new people, and that's you showcase so many people. Everyone that you've done a podcast for this, I've followed straight away and looked at their work, and and there's so much great support in the textile world. I think everybody's really eager to help, and you're introducing people in your blogs and the podcasts, and there's Textile Curator who does 100 in a month,
days,
and
and
I'm just learning all the time. What are the different expressions? What are people trying to express? But yeah, I really love that. I think we've really hit a great medium. I mean, I'm sure if you're a potter, you go, oh yeah, I've hit a great medium too, and there's that. But it's so diverse and so great. I love like artists coming out of South Africa, Europe, America, UK, and each one of them really stands so in their own space and really expresses so differently through textiles. Do you know Hannah Lee T? And she does photographs, and then she does the rubber, and she stitches in that. She's in South Africa, and I'm just in awe of her work. I go, how did someone come up with that? And, all around the world, there's just wonderful artists, and all with most of them with an Instagram handle sort of. So again, that sort of maybe being in character, so they can, have that vulnerability, take risks, and express their artwork through Instagram again without having to maybe be exactly themselves, where, it is a vulnerable place to be, the social media, I think.
I always remember the first time, I think we featured Hannah Lee on the blog quite a few years ago, but she sort of made like telephones with teeth and all these like 3D sculptures, and made out of rubber, and you're like, how strong must her hands be in order to be able to do that? It's pretty amazing. But I think one of the curious things, I think that textile artists champion one another, because textile artists still understand that we've got this weird uphill struggle against like the art establishment. Now, you include paint and other media in your work, so it's almost like in some ways that gives people a shortcut to accepting the work, I'd imagine. But I mean, how do you find the way your work fits within a broader artistic context?
Yeah, I do think that it's a lot. Well, I mean, I must say a lot of people go, oh, my grandmother used to do that. Or, it's a real paradigm shift. I'll say things like, it's great because it absorbs sound. It doesn't reflect light because the way that, I don't put glass on my work. But I'm trying to sell the medium, whereas I just think just let it sell itself sort of thing. But, I do think my paintings sell often more quickly than the tapestries do. That I think they're like a slow burn, like a lot. I've sold quite a lot over the time. Like, I don't have many left in my house. Like what I make often in the end, it might take 5 years, but they'll often go. But I do think it's a paradigm shift, and people getting used to it. We've got the Archibald Prize runs in the New South Wales Gallery, and it's a really big art prize. And this year's winner used textiles, actually used jeans, and it was fabric, and it was stitched, and she won, and I was just so excited. And when I went to the exhibition, there was about 4 significant pieces that were textiles, and I think that there really is a shift towards new materials, new points of expression, and I think textiles is really high up in that. And I'm really, I'm so happy to see it, because I've got lots of ideas. I would love to get into like one of those sort of big end prizes with a textiles piece for many reasons, selfish, just because I could do it, but as the hero being textiles, and lifting lifting the perception of it, just getting people more and more used to it. You know, I often say a canvas is woven textiles. So people are painting on textiles. It's woven. Like if you look at the, you know, it's all primed and everything, but the back of it is, you know, it's woven material. So really, like, it's, those paintings are actually, the basis is textiles. So so there's already a good start.
I feel at some point, I don't know, it's such a weird one, is it? Because I've had conversations with people where we just want to go, it's just art. Like, we shouldn't even have to call it textile art, you know? It's the same way as saying, you know, I'm a guy that does cross-stitch. I should just be able to say I'm a person that does cross-stitch, and for none of the other labels to really matter. But I guess that remains the situation. But as you say, you know, there's so many people that are doing such exciting things. And even with the humble needlepoint and the humble cross-stitch, you know, there's still new directions being created left, right and centre. It's quite fascinating to see. The other thing I wanted to ask you actually was, when you started out, I think a lot of your backgrounds were fairly literal interpretations of like the urban environment, you know, with like posters being stuck on it. And then I was thinking about, I don't know whether you would have seen it, but the Spider-Man Across the Spideyverse, like animated film that came out, which is absolutely stellar in terms of animation. But one of the things that was interesting there was when they did like scenes in the distance, they just kind of used blobs. They didn't, there was a certain point where they could go, we don't need to have literal looking things anymore because the brain will fill in the gaps. And I feel like that's something that you're doing with your work, is like pushing at where you can afford to go abstract and yet still communicate what you're trying to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, because, and sometimes the bigger I go, I'll spray paint my whole big, like 5-count needlepoint canvas. I pin it up at home, like in the garage. It's like way bigger than me. Like I've got ones that are 2 meters high, and I'd get the spray can and I'd do the big colors and, you know, big expressions of the urban environment. And then I'll have drawn my key black lines, and then I'll data project them and hand paint them in. So it's giving the suggestion of the background being urban, but then the foreground, it's all brought together with those key black lines, and then maybe a you know, the butterfly tattoo, or as I was saying, the gecko, to bring in that kind of clarity again. But yeah, the brush strokes, I think, you know, I've been working with a bit of fluoro lately, and I saw some fluoro wool, like nice hot pink and, you know, fluoro yellow, and they just really make those sort of backgrounds pop because of the like the neon lights. I love neon lights, and I've seen a few artists that put it in their work, and that's the next thing. I'd love to be able to design some neon lights to go with the tapestries. It'd be really good. Again, yeah, I've got quite a massive day job, and I carve out as much time as I can, but I'm really looking forward to sort of minimising that again at some stage and pursuing more of my goals, because I've got quite a few bodies of work in the escrow or in the background, or, you know, just waiting to just pounce and really make that, realise that, and make that sort of happen. Like, I feel like at the moment I'm kind of at half pace because, you know, I'm sort of filling in for a head teacher that left, but I've been filling in for 2.5 years. I never really planned to do the big high-end job. So at some stage I'm going to, like, you know, handball this to someone else and give myself, you know, work 4 days a week and really give myself that time to realise a few of the big ideas that, you know, when I say big ideas, I mean big pieces that really showcase, you know, different ideas. I'm working on a series at the moment slowly, and I'm quite enjoying that. And I think you would probably quite like it. I've gotten from deceased estates all these, you know, very old needlepoint tapestries and pulled them out of their frames. And they're like old Australiana or different landscapes. And then we went in the 80s and the 70s, I think, really strong pub rock bands like AC/DC and the Angels and the Saints, and they've got these sort of lyrics, and I'm putting the lyrics on top of the like hand sewing them or putting felt or whatever on top of these very old needlepoint tapestries, because it really works. Like, these pub rock songs are singing about that, and it recontextualizes them, but kind of then spotlights the lyrics out of these songs and sort of shows that paradox of these kind of hard-hitting songs, but what the tapestries that were on, your grandparents' wall at the same time. So I love these sort of recontextualizing these sort of old traditional things and then marrying them up with something a bit edgy. So that's a body of work that I'm pursuing. And then I want to find a pub that used to have all the, the rock bands that's now sort of got gentrified or whatever they've done, and then have my exhibition in a pub with all those sort of lyrics and the old tapestries that have been brought back to life again, given them sort of new hope, really.
It's quite funny as well, because what you're doing there is you're having a temporal conversation, like we were talking about before with the graffiti in the streets. You're doing the same thing. You're taking elements across time and merging them together to create something new.
Yeah, I really love that. Yeah, I guess it's recontextualizing and making, like, kind of celebrating that urban voice, landscape, attitude, and marrying it with those sort of more softer images, I guess.
But there's also like a folk tale thing, because I think a lot of the traditional needlepoints were based on art of the past. There was a certain time when people just did very, I don't know, floral scenes or whatever, there was a sort of romantic approach, and those are kind of like stories that were told in the past. And then when you get your AC/DCs or you get your punk movement, those are modern folk tales at that point in time. So it's almost like those layers again. And now, in the same way as you're doing with your art, you're telling tales, you're like reflecting back on folk tales and pulling them together and going, this is how I process, this is my understanding of the tales that have been told to me over time.
No, you're so right. In fact, you've actually validated even more. Like, I love the idea that it's storytelling, and that's really what it is. That I've got one that's the potato pickers from, I think it was an impressionist thing, but it looks so Australian with these two people with their potatoes in their hand, and it's just gone so well with a Hilltop Hood song. Should have had some land, some money in my hand, but I got nothing. It's sort of like a kind of a bit of a hip-hoppy Australian sort of thing, but it just goes so well. I go, it's almost like the film clip for it, but there was that story and here's this modern story, and it just works really well. So that's sort of, there's lots of those under my bed, and I pull them out and I stitch them, and then that, so that's sort of a work that's going to happen that is running alongside some of the really big lights and brights and urban sort of things. So as I think I said, if I'm going somewhere it needs to be little, I'll pull one of those out. But if I'm going somewhere where I can take a big piece, then I'll take the big one. But it's kind of nice doing, I guess, two bodies of work at the same time. So that gets you out of that love-hate cycle, doesn't it? Because you can switch between two different loves, like flirting with two different people at the same time, I guess. Yeah, and they're quite different. I'll look forward to, it's just taken forever, this like 2 metre high cross stitch. It's got paint on the back of it, so I'm exposing that, and I'm loving it. But I keep looking at it, and it's daunting. So I'll roll it up and put it aside, and then I'll get it back out, and then I'll get the other one. So it's actually helping me to get the big one done. I keep looking and going, why did I think I could do something so big? But when it's done, I think it'll be magnificent. It's going to be just a labour of love, that one.
Of course, the other thing will be interesting is when you get to do this exhibition in the pub, whether you do indeed spray something on the side of the pub and possibly have some kind of chain link fences in front of it for large-scale needlepoint off of that sort of thing. Hot diggity.
Yes. Yes, I love that idea. I love to create a feeling. So when people come in, they get that feeling. So maybe it can start outside and then you go in and like a bit like back in the day that people used to have happenings. So you'd go in and you'd get a feeling. I was during the lockdown, there was a little break, I think, around the June, July, and I had an exhibition and it was in a room and, of course, everyone had to wear masks, but it was a full red room and I used the Chili Peppers, There's a Light On, and I had the lyrics, and most of my tapestries, they were titled by different sort of lyrics that were sort of uplifting. And my whole idea was you came out of the street, you know, that everyone was in sort of a bit COVID-y mode, and you came into this room and there was a shift. You know, I just wanted people to immerse in this sort of red room. There is a light on, and you know, get an earworm because you read the title of something. I think I did one from Fleetwood Mac, like Lay Me Down in the Tall Grass sort of thing. And so if you're prone to earworms, you could not have left that exhibition without some song going on. And I quite like that immersive, you know, all senses. I had a big bowl of lollies, so, you know, that sense was sort of satisfied. Massive. It was a salon hang. So, you know, most of the room was hung with pieces, and then there was the red walls in between, and there was music on, and then there was the titles with the earworm, and I did have some big fluffy pieces that I encouraged for touching. So it was that whole immersive thing. So I'm hoping, if, you know, with the pub one, I can have that immersive, almost going back to the 80s when you'd go to a pub and maybe a sticky carpet floor and, you know, there is, again, the song lyrics to, you know, possibly evoke earworms.
Yeah, this is the land that TapestryGirl lives in.
Do you have
right?
earworms in England?
I've got an earworm right now, thanks very much. I've got a song from Encanto that I woke up with and immediately popped back into my head. Encanto is very strong in our house at the moment.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I love a good earworm.
Yeah, I don't mind them for like the first week or so. I remember once I had, you know, Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah, I love
so
that.
I had the song, Brett, You've Got It Going On for about 3 weeks. Every day I wanted to actually drill a hole in my head. For some reason, that just stuck in there hard. Yeah, that was true.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, I'll just get them. I'll wake up with one and then I'll just beat through all day and I'll be like, oh, come on.
Yeah, it's when I don't mind. I'll have one for a day. When they go like 3 days, you're right. Okay, please, there's got to be. And I don't know what the science is of how you can replace one earworm with another. Do you really have to go back to, like, we don't talk about Bruno for a reset point? I'm not sure quite how it all works.
Yeah. I don't know either. There's definitely some research could be done there. What is with these earworms and where do they come from? Like, how do they go if you don't want it anymore?
It's a good segue actually into my my very specific questions in that case then, because first of all, do you listen to music when you're working? I feel like you probably do. Oh, well, actually not all the time, maybe.
Yeah, not all the time. I'm very much a podcast audiobook person, and I really love audiobooks. I used to read a book a week before I was, you know, so fervently into sewing, and now I've swapped that to audiobooks, and I'm in a book club, and I'll try to read most of the book, but it ends up being audio because you just can't do everything, can you? You can't be sewing and working and doing all the things and reading. So so music I love, and on the weekends, lots of music. I'm a music fan. Sometimes it just needs to be quiet, particularly if I've been teaching all day. And, there's a lot of noise. There's 1,500 people in that building, so there's just energy. So I walk a lot. I walk after work to clear my brain so I can get back and then just get into some artwork and things like that. But I love music. I love now how we have all that streaming. I mean, back in the day we'd, get our album and, play the A side and flip it and, or our cassette or, whatever. But now it's just, it's a smorgasbord. I've got playlists for everything. I've got playlists for cleaning the house. I've got playlists for for all that. So, it's a really different place that we live in, isn't it? Like, I can't imagine getting it in an album and listening all the way through and then listening, I'll pull that song and then I'll combine that with that and all that sort of thing.
It's quite funny. I've got a record player, so I guess I've gone vinyl to some extent. Like, I like to listen to mixes. I always like to listen to stuff I haven't really heard before. It's interesting when you do put records on because some just don't really hold well. It's when you get certain albums like Fleetwood Mac, like Rumours by Fleetwood Mac, you can listen to that one side, turn it over, listen to the other side, Happy Days. Some pieces are really complete because they've been thought out that way, whereas the more modern stuff is a bit kind of disparate, and you listen to a couple of songs you like and you move on. I do quite like getting compilations. Over here we've got a series called Now That's What I Call Music, which has been going since I was like a teenager. So you can get the early ones of those on album, and that's quite good in a way because then it's just like a compilation vinyl. You can just put that on and listen to it. But does TapestryGirl have different musical tastes to Niki McDonald?
She might do. She might be more focused in on the songs as the titles to the. I think TapestryGirl likes all those old songs and I like really from the vault, like even as I was saying, the Chili Peppers and Nirvana, because I pull the titles out and they're such good, strong titles and they really kind of marry up well. And, Niki McDonald does love music, but really podcasts and all. I love information. I love sitting there listening to things and hearing what other people are doing. And
so what's your favourite podcast at the moment then?
Oh, yours by far.
Oh, that is the right answer. Thank you very much.
I'll
give you a 10 later.
I've listened to 4 now. You've got 4 on, haven't you? Or is it? Yeah. So I've listened to all 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
putting that aside,
you.
Obviously. Any other good podcasts?
I've been listening to some just good creativity. I have been listening to some nice, good nutrition ones. I'm a bit addicted to that Dr. Gundry, just listening to him. He's got a real salesman voice. Mainly just different people talking about creativity and art. I just flick through or, I don't know. I'm also big on audiobooks and I've been I just listened to, I don't know if you, what did I listen to? Lessons in Chemistry. There's it's a book that was just out this year by Bonnie Garmless, I think, and very strong female lead and really enjoyed her. Listened to The Rules of Civility by Amor Towles, who did, he did The Gentleman in Moscow. Okay. Anyway, I'm just loving that sort of lots of strong female characters doing really empowering things.
And do you enjoy listening to fiction books rather than non-fiction books?
Oh, pretty even out. I really like philosophy books too, just on the way things happen, the way behaviour, sort of the way people think, and I do really. I like a good story. I don't like anything scary. I don't like too much tension. I'm such a visual person that as soon as I read, see or hear anything scary, I don't want to stay home alone at night. I've got too much of a vivid imagination. So it's all got to be kind of nice, happy endings, that sort of thing.
I've asked the podcast question to a couple of people, and both of them, Fiance and Meredith Woolnough, both said the Ologies podcast, which I've now downloaded a couple of episodes of.
Oh.
So each episode looks at an ology. The one I've downloaded, it's a 2-part thing, but it's about emojis, and I think they call it Curioology or something because it's about visual language. But they have all these different, and then they get an expert on that field, whether it's mushrooms or vampires or whatever. But it's one of those ones where suddenly after 2 hours you become a micro expert on a subject, and then you can bore your friends with it or whatever. So that sounds like that might float your boat a bit.
I'll definitely look that up.
Do you have a favourite album then? I know Chili Peppers is pretty strong.
No, well, that's because I've had all the titles in because they just kind of work for that. But, when I was sort of growing up, I loved all the English bands. I loved all the punk stuff, then all the New Romantics. I loved Boy George. I loved all that. And then, moved through that, all that. But one constant thing in my life was Leonard Cohen. My mum used to play it when I was young, and she'd sort of sing and, love the way he does Hallelujah. And so I guess Leonard Cohen has stood the test of time. He's really poetic. He's quite edgy. He did an album, Songs of Love and Hate. And there we have the paradox. Mm-hmm. So I'll choose Leonard Cohen, I think, as my favourite. I mean, there's just so much choice, but I'm going to put him down as someone who's just stood the test of time, someone I know nearly every word of, and I just have deep respect for him.
Because I'm not massively familiar with him, but is his work quite urban?
Well, he was quite. Yeah, he was slightly, I think he had a tortured sort of sensibility. I think he's quite urban.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not urban funky. He's I think he's a storyteller.
Yeah, but telling tales of like cities rather than telling tales of the countryside, for the sake of argument.
Yeah, and heartbreak. Lots of heartbreak. You know what songs are like. So Long Marianne, and you can see he's really quite tortured.
Yeah.
but he's good, I like him.
It goes really well with the vibrant colours that you're stitching at the same time.
I know. See, paradox. I keep saying to myself, how am I like this? And I am not that into star signs, but I'm going to say because I'm a Gemini. And, I've got the twins.
You feel very balanced.
Good. That's good.
Do you have a favourite film?
Well, I think, again, it can't be anything horrific. So I like fun films. And, again, it's like over the time. I loved Grease and Blues Brothers and Saturday Night Fever and anything that's sort of fun and that you can just enjoy. I love that Crazy Stupid Love that was out recently. I think anything Emma Stone's in does, she's really good. We have Margot Robbie in Australia who does all the amazing things. She's just done Barbie. Whatever she touches has turned to gold. So is it going to be really bad if I don't have a favourite film?
No, because there's no right answer here.
Because... I barely get, because you just can't stitch in a film theatre.
That's true.
It's all dark. And I sit there and go, that was 3 hours where I just lost stitching time. But, unless I had a little head torch and was doing this.
Do you have...
Yeah, I don't go to the movies that often.
To that point, do you have a favourite outdoor space for stitching then?
Oh, yeah. I just love forests and trees and the beach. I've got in Australia, I don't know if they've got these cool cabana things, and you set them up and it's like a little tent on 4 legs, and you put the sand in so they don't blow away. It's like a much better umbrella. And my friends and I, we go down to the beach and set them up, and, I bring the sewing, and I love that. And then when it's hot, going to, for a swim and coming back, and I just love it. Or I love traveling out to, the greater west. You go up over the Blue Mountains and out, and it's just beautiful. The sunsets are stunning, and it's always natural environments. I love getting all comfy and just the environment, beautiful, just fills my soul with happiness. And there I am, not wasting a minute because I'm stitching away and making something.
Man, it's so nice talking to you because you're so sort of chilled. It sounds a bit daft. This might sound daft, but obviously looking at your Instagram, TapestryGirl, lots of fun and action, but you're much calmer and more considered than I was expecting.
Yeah, I guess that's a lot of the reason I even do tapestry, because I'm not extroverted. I don't really I'm not, like, I feel like I'm contentedly introvert. I spend time with sewing and with headphones and walking and like with close friends and things like that, and I guess that does balance me. But yeah, even like I was a bit nervous to do the podcast. I had to get my computer and set it up and make sure everything was going to be okay, and so I do. Yeah.
No,
it's
I think
like a contented sort of.
I think me and my wife have realised that we're both sort of comfortable introverts, or maybe it's just that we're generally irritated by other people. But either way, we realise that we just quite like hanging out with ourselves. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I think you probably are a bit more extroverted than I would be. Maybe. I think you shine, and you like to put a lot out there. I do hide behind my artwork quite a lot.
This is all
or
just
hide
veneer,
behind TapestryGirl, maybe.
Mine's just veneer. It's just all pretend stuff. I got one more question for you then. I was going to say, what's the most interesting thing that nobody really knows about you then?
Okay, so I do have one, I think, that's kind of funny and interesting. So when I left uni, I worked at a television station at Channel 7, and I did that for nearly 10 years, because I had my teaching, but I didn't cash that in. I knew that was for later. But I worked on like Home and Away and a country practice, and I did all the sets and the props, and I'd go out to Summer Bay, and I'd do, it was my show. I worked on it. I loved it. But I also then worked on another show called Rafferty's Rules, which was about a local magistrate that was working in Manly in Sydney. And in one of the episodes, they had the Queen, and the Queen was coming to Australia, and she was driving in her Rolls Royce around Manly, and the Queen, the actor, never turned up. So they dressed me up as the Queen, little kind of hat and like all the outfit, and in a Rolls Royce, and I drove around Manly just doing the Queen's wave out of the window for about 3 hours while they got all the shots and all that sort of stuff. And so I think that's pretty funny that I happened to be the Queen for about 3 hours. But it was great working in telly. So many funny experiences. Again, that behind the scenes, making it sort of, getting all the sets right, getting all the props right, getting, it was a really, really good job, but I couldn't sustain that and parent and do art and all that sort of stuff.
That's so, because I always remember, I think I saw whether it was the documentary when Friends ended or something, but there was always a thing just about, Friends is just a set, but the amount of crap in Monica's flat that they had to put in exactly the right place every time they rebuilt the set. Is that the kind of territory that you're talking about?
Yes, continuity. So, like, I don't know if you've watched Home and Away. I know it's on in England and that, but they have this Summer Bay, and it's just, it's at Palm Beach. It's a surf club, but we had all these panels, and they were all in the right. They would be all stored and taken out in a truck, and you'd put all the panels up and put all the props out, and everything had to be just all the same. Or, on the set, you'd even like if like one of the Pippa was cutting a leg of lamb or something, you'd have to have 4 legs of lamb, because if you didn't cut it right and serve it, next one in. Or on the beach, the main characters would be walking along, in some form of romantic dialogue with an ice cream, but the ice cream was mashed potato on top because, so it didn't melt. Or there'd be like a big spread of food, and it'd all have to be fly sprayed because, it's Sydney, Australia, and of course the flies are going to come. So all fly sprayed. So they had to pretend to eat it, and, lots of pretense, lots of fun.
Is it quite hard to unsee that now? If you watch another TV program, do you find yourself picking out the details in the background?
But I can barely watch TV. It's the story arc and all the smoke and the mirrors and all that sort of thing. Yeah, it's like I can see it all.
That's so good.
But that was sort of back before. But I think it's funny. I don't think about that too much now because I'm so entrenched in teaching and my artwork and life.
I might periodically call you Your Majesty now, if that's all right.
Yeah, please do. No, TapestryGirl, Your Majesty. But, I think that I was actually only just thinking about that recently, and I thought, God, that was like a funny thing to do, drive around Manly in a Rolls Royce doing the Queen's wave.
Do you now default to that wave just from time to time? It's a sort of, it's in the wrist, isn't it, the wave or something?
I think so. One time I was working on Home and Away and the characters were up the top, but I was down the bottom, and they wanted seagulls to be up on the balcony. So I'm down the bottom throwing hot chips in the air, looking like a mad person as people are walking by thinking, because all the crew was up on the balcony. It was only me down the bottom throwing chips up in the air to hopefully have seagulls get in the background of the shot.
Do the people in the area, do they get used to it because you're filming in the same pace like fairly regularly? It sort of...
Yeah, and now it's really popular. I haven't worked on it for years, but now they've got little bus tours out to the different locations to see where they are, and because it's really popular now, that show.
I mean, there was a real halcyon moment for me because Neighbours and Home and Away were both on around the same time. Maybe one was after the other on 2 different channels or whatever. So definitely I was like with Home and Away probably for like the first 5 years, something like that. And then it gets in the way. I used to wake up at uni and turn the telly on and Neighbours would start, like the lunchtime version of it or whatever. It's very important. And everybody's got their, like, my wife's 8 years younger than me, so her important neighbours people are very different to my important neighbours people, which is always quite funny as well. It's like different.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. I know. They're moments in time, aren't they?
They are, yeah. If people want to find out all about you, if they want to follow your work, if they want to buy your work, where should they go?
Well, I reckon Instagram's my most active, and that's tapestry.girl. But I do have a website, which is just TapestryGirl. I guess they're the best points of call. I find Facebook's a bit tricky. Like, I've got the Facebook and I do all that, but it's not nearly as succinct for me as Instagram is. Like, I kind of feel like I've got some ownership over what I'm doing. When I do Facebook, it ends up here or there. I don't know. So... So Instagram and the Tapestry Girl.
Do you think we'll see you on TikTok anytime soon?
Yeah, I know you're on it.
For a second, God help us.
I saw that, but I don't know. It's that sort of like, can I learn all these new things? Is the TikTok going to be superseded and the next thing, and then I'll have to learn that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think if I know anything about you, Niki, I think you need to keep it as analog as possible. Keep sitting in a forest, stitching urban, because it's what makes it magnificent.
I think so. It's going to probably make the output sort of a bit more pure.
Hey, Niki.
Yeah.
Thanks for having a NeedleXChange with me.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been really, really good. I've really enjoyed exploring all the different things and remembering past events. And and I really want to say I appreciate how easy you made it to sort of chitter-chat away.
That's a relief. Thank you. Thanks for joining me on another Needle Exchange. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to email hello@needle.exchange, that's NEEDL.exchange, with any thoughts, comments or feedback. And if you want to keep up with all the news, sign up to the Needle Exchange mailing list at bit.ly/needleexchange. See you next time.